Welcome to Uncommon Impact. I'm Nathan Whitaker. And today I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you, things that have come up in some of our prior episodes, things that I've been thinking about. Just wanted to talk for a second about culture. The guests we've had so far, we've had 4 guests. One is a head coach. One was the vice president of a university department. One was in the front office of NFL teams for years. And then one is an athletic director at international schools and has moved from country to country to country. And I was thinking about my guests and my initial guests with this idea of culture in mind. And I created that assortment in part because I wanted to get their perspective, because we've got a head coach who could really do a lot directly to set the culture of the organization that he's in. He's been a head coach for the last 20 some odd years. Before that was on staffs as an assistant. So a couple of decades of really having a direct hand in setting the culture. The vice president of a university department can't set the culture for the university as a whole, but certainly can help set the culture for his department, but has to work within the constructs of the overall university, what they're trying to achieve, what they've got, what their mission is, but he also can have some say in creating it within his department. Then we get to the NFL executive, and there we shared a little bit, Samir talked a little bit about the challenges of having a head coach or an owner who either sees things differently or wants to do things a certain way. And so what do you do when you're not only able to set it, then what you do when you find that sometimes it's maybe running contrary to what you think the culture should be, how people should be treated, whatever the issues are. And then also threw in Kent, because of the international aspect, because we're dealing with cultures within culture. It's one thing to look at it and say, okay, here's what we did in this setting, and I'm going to a new place, and I would like to adopt some of those practices. I'd like to change some things. I'd like to make sure this works. That's all important, and that all should be done. But then also doing it within the framework of, okay, there are different norms here, possibly different values, different things I need to understand when I come in. True of any organization, right? Every organization is different. The makeup is always different, in no small part because people are always different. So we have to keep an eye toward that. That was part of why I thought Kent's observations about the larger culture and the culture within a culture resonated and made sense. Because at the end of the day, culture matters. It's a buzzword that everybody talks about. Maybe there's a different word we should be using. But I think that it's a buzzword that everybody talks about because it's so important. We've been in settings, at least I have, and I'm guessing most of you have too, where the culture was lousy, where either there was a spirit of fear or something like that. I experienced that in one of my jobs where the head coach was setting the culture, and I had what I thought would be a welcome change, and it was brought to me by the players, and I talked to them about it, and they kept raising this as, hey, is this something we can do? Is this a change we can make in how we operate? And people kept telling me, the head coach has set everything in motion. Don't ask him. He's got everything exactly like he wants. He makes sure that he knows exactly what is going on. And so really it's a culture of he tells us what to do and we do it. And I said, well, I think this actually is going to make us better. And realized at one point that maybe their assessment of the culture wasn't fair, but there was a culture of intimidation and people didn't want to go to him. So one day I walked up to the head coach and I said, hey, coach, there's this issue that's come before me, and here's how we've done it, and here's what the players are suggesting we might do to tweak it. And he threw up his hands and he said, why would I care? That's great. Anything that makes your life easier, anything that makes the players' lives easier, anything that better gets us ready to play our game on Sunday, great, let's do it. That's not something that's central to how we do things. Let's absolutely make that change. But in that overall culture where people were afraid to ask and to do things, and realize that sometimes it's not a culture that was necessarily put in place, right? That it's one that we embody, that we found, okay, probably shouldn't do that, but we make assumptions and we think that maybe there's something in place that isn't. And so it took me to kind of get a little nerve, go talk and realize that, okay, these assumptions are wrong. He actually did welcome input and thoughts and questions. Another thing I ran across in one of my other organizations was not necessarily that culture of fear or intimidation or nervousness, but it was just kind of, it wasn't necessarily aloofness, but maybe just a lack of cooperation. and not necessarily overt, just kind of assumptions, again, being made where people weren't communicating and talking. And so there were assumptions in place. And so I was working in football operations. I was doing salary cap stuff, scouting stuff, and then also all the football budgets fell under me. So whether it was scouting or equipment or coaching or player costs or whatever, ultimately I submitted budgets to the CFO, accounting, the owners, and we worked through those and figured that out. Well, we had, and I can't remember the issue anymore, but we had some charge that regularly came up, and it was either a consultant or some sort of equipment that didn't factor in neatly into like the weight room or whatever it might be, but something we were using on the football side. One day I'm walking through the accounting department and somebody got up the nerve to say, "Hey, can I ask you a question about whatever this recurring expense was?" And I said, "Sure." And they said, "Well, we really don't have a bucket to put that in. And so we've been putting it here as this cost. And so we've just kind of been carrying it forward and then taking out of this. And if times the budget, whatever it may be," they were trying to figure out how best to categorize it and what it was for. And so I sat down and I said, "Oh, okay, that totally makes sense. Here's what it is." And I talked through it all, what we did for it, why we had it, why it was an expense. And they realized where it would go and where it was best appropriated and how to account for it. And so I felt badly that these folks had been doing this for at least months, if not the last year or so, in trying to figure out, and every week was kind of a, what do we do with this and where do we put this and how do we assign this? And they just said at one point, one of them said, "We didn't want to bother you because we know better than to bother folks in the football side of things." And it was just a minor question. And I found myself laughing and I said, "We are not splitting the atom, right? We are not curing cancer over there. Feel free to come in and interrupt us. And we'll figure this out together if it saves you time and we can make everybody's lives easier." So it wasn't a culture of fear or oppression or anything like that, but it was just a culture of thinking, well, they've got their thing to do and I don't want to bother them. And sometimes those cultures happen when we don't pay attention. We've got to make sure that we're being intentional about the culture we want to create and what we want to do. One other thing I wanted to talk about, this idea of communication and connection. And you heard Donnie Jones talk about connecting, that communicating is not enough, that connecting is what's necessary to make sure that we're working together. Samir talked about disrespect being a real problem, disagreement not. And what's the difference between disrespect and disagreement? Well, at some level, there's some sort of connection, right? It's hard to disrespect. I can do it, but it's harder on me to disrespect somebody that I've got a connection with, right? I understand where they're coming from. I understand what their lives are like. I understand how they've been working with me in the past, whatever it may be. And so if we disagree, great. We're going to disagree on the principles. We're going to disagree about whatever the issue is, and hopefully that's going to make the organization better. Disagreement is healthy, as Samir said. Disrespect is not. And so if I can keep it focused on the principles, if we've connected, and I'm not going to turn it into people and create some sort of ad hominem attack that I'm attacking you, the person. Instead, we're going to figure out the principle and where our disagreement comes through that. Kent talked about this connection in terms of questions, that he may know the answers. He may know the answers to the culture he wants to get and the way he wants people to communicate. But he tries to create connections by asking questions. That is, if something comes before him, he may say to somebody, "Hey, I heard you talking to a student this way or a parent this way. I think I know where you're trying to get. Have you ever had somebody phrase it that way? What was your response? Do you think there might be a better way? Or if this is where we're trying to get and we want buy-in, how could we maybe handle that in a different way? Is there some other way we could tackle that? Something else we could do in trying to figure that out? How should we best go about that?" And he says he has a variety of questions that he'll ask, that he'll trot out for different situations, but just a way to try to connect and to help people get there without him having to dictate. Yes, I can communicate, I can tell you what to do, but if I can connect, and if that somehow this resonates with you and it becomes your decision when you hear it and say, "Yes, if I had been told that, I would be defensive. I wouldn't want to hear it. I wouldn't be open to it. Oh, but if you invite me to walk alongside you, then maybe I do take some ownership, they take some ownership," and he moves forward in that way. And then Matt shared about connection with this wonderful idea of tell them now. This idea that people help us from time to time, that people serve roles in our lives. And so often we don't say anything until the funeral comes along. And so we're just trying to work through life and we're just trying to do our thing and we forget Hello, Fezzik. This is my cat, Fezzik. He's got 3 legs, and he is awesome. And he often likes to help me work. But how we do things matters, and whether or not we share those things with people who help us. There are people along the way who've played a role in our lives, and are we giving them a chance to realize that while they're still there, to appreciate it? A beautiful lesson. Tell them now. Make sure that people know the role they've played in your lives. Again, this idea of connecting. How are we as leaders, as people who want strong teams, as people who want to live significant lives, building an intentional culture where we can work together, and then doing so in a way in which we build real connections that last and that matter, whether it's with Fezzik or the people we work with. Some days he's my strongest team member here as I work alone from my office. So here's something you can do this week. Think about your organization. It could be your work organization. It could be something you serve at church, scouting, whatever it may be, a community thing, Rotary, whatever your organization is, your team is. And think about, what are people experiencing? What really matters when it comes to culture? Because again, at the end of the day, the culture is not the big words in a speech or the things we put on the wall. It's what people experience every day in the small things. Culture is built day by day in the little actions, the little comments that we put together over and over. It's one thing to say, I'm always there for you, but my door is closed most of the time. Or it's one thing to say, I'm always there for you, but I'm looking over your shoulder at whoever's coming down the hall that I can talk to next. But am I really listening? Am I really interacting? Am I really whatever it may be? So think about what your culture is and what really matters. Is there something missing? What's critical to you? Is it honesty in your organization? Is it trust? Is it accountability? Is it a sense of caring? Is it a sense of excellence to make sure that we're excellent in all that we do? Whatever it may be, take a look at that and think about what really matters. Now think about, and this is the hard question, is there a gap? We want honesty. Are we free to share with each other what's going on? Ways in which I might need help in the sales department from somebody in marketing or in development or in manufacturing or whatever. Are we able to figure those things out together? Is the culture reinforcing what we need? So, is there something you can do this week as you move forward to strengthen that? Can you reach out? Can you ask somebody? Can you notice? Leading by wandering. Can you just pay attention to what's going on? And then finally, that critical skill that sometimes we're not always very good at least I'm not. Can you listen? Not just hear, but can you listen and understand what somebody's saying and what they're trying to get at? That's my charge to you this week. Is there a way in which you can strengthen and understand and reinforce the culture and any gaps there might be in where you are versus where you want to be? Have a great day. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found some worthwhile takeaways. Thanks for being a part of Uncommon Impact. If you've liked this or the other episodes, we'd love it if you'd give us a like, a 5-star rating, subscribe, tell a friend. All very much appreciated from both me and Fezzik.